In his secluded mansion, renowned plastic surgeon Robert Ledgard keeps a young woman named Vera in captivity. His obsession lies in developing a revolutionary artificial skin, one that is resistant to burns and can also protect against insect bites. One evening, Robert attends a medical conference, passionately presenting his theories to fellow scientists, urging them to collaborate in his groundbreaking research. After the meeting, he returns home and examines an animal blood sample he had collected earlier from a hospital. Later that night, as he watches Vera through a surveillance screen, he notices something alarming and rushes to her room. To his horror, she has attempted to take her own life. In a state of shock, Robert quickly treats her wounds in his lab. As Vera regains consciousness, she weakly asks him how long this torment will continue, but Robert remains silent, revealing the grim reality. She has been his test subject for years. Living with Robert in the mansion is his longtime housekeeper Marilia, who is fully aware of Vera's captivity and his secret experiments. The next morning, during breakfast, Marilia hands Robert a gallon of blood, informing him that it was freshly extracted from a live animal. Taking it to his lab, Robert resumes his experiments. His workspace is filled with various blood samples and live insects, all essential to his research. In a breakthrough moment, Robert extracts the artificial skin from its culture and carefully applies it to a headless model before finally grafting it onto Vera. To test its effectiveness, he subjects it to burn tests and mosquito exposure. The results are astonishing. The skin proves to be resistant to both fire and insect bites. At his next conference, Robert proudly announces his success, introducing his innovation as Gal, a tribute to his late wife who had suffered severe burns. He claims that this new artificial skin will revolutionize medicine and even help eradicate malaria. However, he deceives the audience by stating that the trials were conducted on lab mice, while in reality, Vera has been the true test subject. When questioned about the specifics of his research, Robert reveals that he combined pig genes with human cells to enhance the skin's strength and resilience, an illegal and ethically controversial practice. Upon hearing Robert's words, the chief scientist immediately halts his research, warning him that if he refuses to comply, he will be reported to the board. That night, Robert returns home and enters Vera's room, informing her that his experiments on her are now complete. Shocked, Vera questions him about her future, but Robert remains silent. Instead, she unexpectedly proposes that they get married and live together. This unsettles Robert, and he hastily leaves the room. Later, Marilia advises Robert that he should get rid of Vera, fearing that her resemblance to his deceased wife Gal might cause problems in the future. However, Robert dismisses the idea, stating that he is in no rush. Instead, he instructs Marilia to fire all the servants, ensuring that Vera remains hidden for an extended period. The following day, as the servants depart, a mysterious man in a tiger costume arrives at the gate. Introducing himself as Zika, he reveals that he is Marilia's long-lost son, whom she has not seen in a decade due to their strained relationship. Overcome with emotion, she lets him in and offers him food. As they sit down to eat, a news report flashes on the television, revealing that Zika was involved in a bank robbery. When Marilia confronts him, he casually admits it. Blaming his partner for failing to turn off the security cameras, he pleads with her to let him stay for a few days. While at the mansion, Zika notices Vera on the surveillance screen and is stunned by her beauty. There's something eerily familiar about her face, and he demands to know where her room is. Marilia refuses to answer, trying to protect Vera, but Zika doesn't back down. He ties Marilia to a chair and begins searching the house. Eventually, Zika finds Vera's room and forcefully enters. As he approaches her, he makes a shocking remark. He never expected to see her alive. Vera's face is the exact replica of Gal, Robert's late wife. At that moment, Robert arrives at the mansion and discovers Marilia bound to a chair. Glancing at the nearby monitor, he sees Zika attempting something horrific with Vera. Overcome with rage, Robert storms into the room, pulls out a gun, and shoots Zika. As Zika collapses, Robert rushes to Vera's side, holding her protectively. Surprisingly, Marilia does not blame Robert for killing her son. In fact, she takes it upon herself to clean up the crime scene without hesitation. Meanwhile, Robert disposes of Zika's body. While he is away, Marilia unveils a startling revelation to Vera. Zika and Robert were, in fact, brothers. She discloses that Zika was born from her affair with a colleague, whereas Robert was the legitimate son of Mr. Ledgard, her former employer. Since Mr. Ledgard's wife was unable to conceive, they adopted Robert and never revealed the truth to him. This means Marilia is Robert's true mother, though he remains completely unaware of this fact. Vera, perplexed, questions why Zika acted as though he recognized her. Marilia clarifies the misunderstanding, explaining that he mistook her for Robert's late wife, Gal, who bore a striking resemblance to her. She then paints a vivid contrast between the lives of Robert and Zika, two men raised in entirely different worlds. Robert grew up with wealth and privilege, pursued a career in medicine, and built a beautiful family with his wife, Gal, and their daughter, Norma. Meanwhile, Zika was raised in hardship, surviving on the streets and descending into lawlessness. Everything took a disastrous turn 12 years ago when Zika, on the run after committing a crime, sought refuge at their home. Marilia allowed him to stay in the outbuilding, unaware that he would become dangerously fixated on Gal the moment he laid eyes on her. That obsession drove him to a reckless decision. He persuaded Gal to run away with him. But their escape ended in catastrophe when they were involved in a severe car accident. Prioritizing his own safety, Zika abandoned Gal in the wreckage, leaving her trapped in the flames. When Robert finally found her, she was barely holding on to life, her face left unrecognizable. Despite everything, his devotion to her never wavered. Using his expertise, he worked tirelessly to care for her, refusing to let her see the full extent of the damage. He removed every mirror in their home, shielding her from the painful truth. Though her body healed, her spirit was beyond repair. One day, she heard Norma's voice singing in the yard and instinctively followed the sound. But in that moment, she caught a glimpse of herself in a window. That fleeting reflection shattered the last remnants of her will to live. Overcome with despair, she made a heartbreaking decision, leaping from the window right before Norma's eyes. The trauma of witnessing her mother's fate haunted Norma, weighing on her mind until, years later, she followed the same tragic path. That night, as Robert and Vera lay together, an intimate moment begins to unfold. But suddenly, she hesitates, haunted by memories of the torment she endured in the past. Sensing her distress, Robert stops, understanding her pain. Instead, they simply hold each other and drift into sleep. That night, Robert's subconscious is plagued with visions of Norma's tragic fate. The story then rewinds 6 years. Norma, still battling the trauma of her mother's loss, struggles to find peace. Hoping to lift her spirits, Robert takes her to a social gathering, but soon after they arrive, she mysteriously vanishes. Frantically searching for her, Robert spots a young man speeding away on a bike. Following the clues, he eventually finds Norma lying unconscious near a tree. When she awakens, she is so overwhelmed with fear that she fails to recognize her own father, perceiving him as a threat. Her terrified screams pierce the air, leaving Robert shattered. He jolts awake from the nightmare, his body drenched in sweat. At the same time, Vera experiences a vivid dream of a man named Vicente, who works at his mother's boutique. He harbors unspoken feelings for Christina, a colleague, unaware that she does not share his romantic interests. Vicente also attends the very same gathering Robert had just dreamed of, but this time the events unfold through his perspective. At the party, Vicente and Norma cross paths, an instant connection sparking between them. They slip away into the garden, where things take an unexpectedly intense turn. However, something in the moment unsettles Norma, and she suddenly recoils in panic. As Vicente tries to soothe her, she reacts with raw terror, biting his hand in desperation. Instinctively, he retaliates, striking her hard enough to render her unconscious. Fear overtakes him. He hurriedly adjusts her clothing and flees the scene on his bike. A month later, Vicente embarks on a motorcycle ride, unaware that Robert is silently trailing him. Fueled by a thirst for retribution, Robert engages in a relentless pursuit, forcing Vicente into a violent crash. As Vicente regains consciousness, disoriented and dazed, Robert swiftly injects him with a powerful sedative. Helpless, Vicente succumbs to unconsciousness, and Robert transports him to his hidden lair. Meanwhile, a police officer visits Vicente's mother, bringing devastating news. His damaged motorcycle was found near a cliff. Authorities fear the worst, suspecting that he may have been lost to the sea. But his mother refuses to accept this possibility. Deep inside, she believes her son is still alive. The next day, Robert visits Norma at the psychiatric hospital, hoping to provide some comfort. However, the emotional scars from her past are too severe. She no longer recognizes him as her father and withdraws into a world where only the female caregivers can reach her. In the concealed basement, Vicente is trapped in a nightmare of relentless torment. Bound in place, denied food and water, he experiences unbearable distress. Yet, with time, Robert's treatment of him shifts. Instead of inflicting more suffering, he begins offering him food, cleaning him up, and moving him to a slightly more tolerable space. When Norma ultimately succumbs to her inner turmoil and ends her own suffering, Robert, unable to bear the grief, buries himself in his work, searching for a way to escape his agony. Determined to carry out his plan, Robert carefully prepares Vicente for an irreversible transformation, removing all traces of his past identity. To ensure the procedure appears legitimate, he invites other doctors and forges a false consent document. It is in this moment that Robert's true intentions become evident. He plans to reshape Vicente into someone entirely different. The procedure is successfully completed, and Vicente undergoes an irreversible transformation. When he regains consciousness, he is horrified to realize that his entire existence has been altered. Panic sets in as he struggles to comprehend what has been done to him. When he looks at himself in the mirror, Robert arrives, handing him medical tools intended to aid in the healing and adjustment process. Over the following months, Robert closely monitors his recovery, ensuring that everything proceeds according to plan. During this period, Robert finally reveals his motive. His actions were driven by the desire for retribution for what happened to his daughter. Trapped with no other choice, Vicente complies with Robert's demands, holding on to the faint hope that freedom might one day be within reach. Years pass, and through a series of surgical procedures, Vicente is completely reshaped, now known as Vera, the woman we met at the beginning of the story. As Vera's recovery progresses, she sees an opportunity to escape. However, Robert quickly locks down the house, preventing any way out. Overcome with despair, she attempts to end her own suffering, but Robert intervenes just in time and rushes her to his lab to treat her wounds. As he stitches her up, he firmly tells her that her new identity is now Vera, and that this is who she will be from now on. From that moment on, Vera is confined to a specially designed room. Left with nothing but a television for company, she tries to find peace through yoga to keep her mind from unraveling. Realizing that Vera needs someone to watch over her, Robert reaches out to Marilia, who had left the house years ago. Upon her return, he gives her strict orders. Under no circumstances is she to open Vera's door without his approval. Now, back in the present timeline, Robert and Vera seem to be forming an unexpected connection. Robert is convinced that life with Vera will be normal. While Marilia remains uneasy about Vera moving freely around the house, Robert sees no issue. He even allows Vera to accompany Marilia on a shopping trip. Later, Marilia warns Robert that giving her too much freedom might be a mistake, but he dismisses her concerns. He wholeheartedly believes that Vera cares for him. Meanwhile, Vicente's mother never stops searching for her missing son. Year after year, she continues to publish his photo in the newspaper, desperate for answers. One day, Robert's colleague stumbles upon one of these missing person ads and immediately realizes the truth. He remembers performing a major surgical procedure on Vicente and confronts Robert, accusing him of deception. But before the situation escalates, Vera steps in and defends Robert, claiming that she willingly agreed to the procedure out of love and a deep desire to embrace her new life. Reassured by Vera's statement, the colleague eventually backs down, while Robert silently feels grateful for her unwavering support. That night, as Robert and Vera are in bed together, she suddenly gets up, saying she needs a lubricating cream, but in reality, she has something else in mind. She sneaks downstairs, opens a drawer, and quietly takes out a gun, slipping it into her bag. Before heading back upstairs, she pauses to caress an old photograph, one from a time when she was still Vicente. Tears fill her eyes as she kisses the picture one last time and rushes back to Robert. The moment she steps into the room, she pulls out the gun and aims it at him. Robert is caught completely off guard. Vera then reveals the truth. She never loved him. It was all a lie. And before Robert can react, she pulls the trigger, ending his life. Downstairs, Marilia hears the gunshot. Grabbing her revolver, she hurries to the room, but Vera is already waiting. Hiding under the bed, she strikes at the right moment, ensuring Marilia meets the same fate as Robert. The next day, Vera arrives at her mother's boutique, where Christina attends to her. As she walks through the shop, she finally opens up, revealing her entire story. Christina is overwhelmed, breaking into tears as she listens. To prove her identity, Vera takes out a dress, a special one from 6 years ago. At that moment, Christina finally understands the painful truth. The film concludes as Vera stands before her mother and with a trembling voice declares, "I am your son, Vicente." All right, guys, if you enjoyed this breakdown, stick around. There's plenty more amazing content on the way. Don't forget to subscribe. Love you all. Bye.